So I really liked The Batman. It's definitely my favorite movie of the year so far. I released a review of it a little while ago, which you can watch by clicking the card. Although, it was in a double review alongside Turning Red, so you'd have to skip through that to get to it. I'll link it with a time code to when it actually starts talking about the movie if I can figure out how to do that in the card. Whenever a movie comes out that I personally quite like, I like to take a look at some of the negative reviews to see if I find any of them unreasonable. It's not just to say that just because I like a film, that means it's completely beyond criticism. In fact, I myself had a couple of issues with it that I pointed out in my review. I just like to take a look at other people's negative criticisms because it might give me a new perspective on it, or just to have a laugh at someone who is completely misunderstanding the point of the film. And that's what we're going to be doing today. This is Ben Shapiro. He is a big fancy politics man who sounds like a YouTube video being played at 2 times speed.
So last night I went and saw The Batman, went and saw it with my wife. It is 1 million hours long. And it's one of those movies where I started off and I was like, okay. And then I got a little further in and I was like, all right. And then I got to the end, I was like, meh. And then the more I thought about it, the angrier I became.
Aside from being the editor-in-chief of a notoriously stupid far-right news outlet, he also has a YouTube channel where he says shit like this.
And you get the idiocy of a film in which you basically redo the Battle of Hoth, except you make it on a salt planet, and then you say it's a salt planet 10 times so that people don't think that it's just the Ice Battle of Hoth all over again, when it's obviously just the Ice Battle of Hoth all over again.
Salt.
A little while ago, he reviewed The Batman, and oh boy does he miss the point of this movie so hard. Ben's main point about why he apparently hates this movie is that he believes that the movie hates Batman, and that's not even me putting words in his mouth. He makes it very clear multiple times that that's what he believes.
The biggest problem with the film is that the film hates Batman. Like the actual Batman character hates the Batman character. And this drives me up an absolute wall. The film despises Batman. The entire basis of the character is the cops are bad at targeting criminals because they're corrupt. Batman is good at targeting criminals because he's smart and because he's rich and because he's incorruptible. That's the entire basis of Batman. And they take all that and they flip it on its head because they don't like Batman. Matt Reeves, who's credited as both a director and a writer on the film, he does not like Batman. And I can't get over this. How do you give $150 million to a dude to make a movie about Batman when he clearly does not like Batman? When he thinks that Batman is bad? It's better than Marvel because everything's better than Marvel because Marvel doesn't take characters seriously and Marvel feels like cotton candy. This doesn't feel like cotton candy. It just feels like a fundamental betrayal of the character, which is just, it's lazy writing. And more than that, it's not nice to the audience. The audience wants to see Batman be Batman and be good at being Batman and know why he's being Batman. They don't want to see Batman learn the lesson that being Batman is bad.
Now, the idea that a Batman movie hates Batman is a very strong thing to suggest, so let's see how well he justifies it.
So, what is this movie about? This movie is about how fighting criminality does not actually help innocent people. He says this at the very beginning. He says, I'm not sure I'm doing any good. I'm not sure I'm doing any good. By fighting the criminals, crime is still up. It turns out that Batman has to stop being Batman. Batman has been missing it the whole time. What Batman really has to be is Superman. Batman needs to go into areas like Madison Square Garden and not fight the criminals. He needs to go and lead people with a torch to a slightly safer area. He needs to help medevac people on the top of it. He needs to build Habitat for Humanity. He needs to join Jimmy Carter and build houses for homeless people. That's what Batman needs to be doing. This really is a sort of attack on the idea that fighting crime helps innocent people. It's an almost defund the police attitude toward what crime is. And it's an attack on the basic idea that individuals are capable of doing justice by finding bad guys and fighting them. Instead, apparently, individuals are only capable of doing nice things by helping little old ladies cross the street. It's this sort of mentality that has led to New York turning into Gotham City in the last couple of years, by the way. That's a fundamental betrayal of what Batman is. What makes Batman different from the Riddler and than any of these other criminals is these criminals target innocent people and Batman targets criminals. That's the basis of the character. The entire basis of the character is the cops are bad at targeting criminals because they're corrupt. Batman is good at targeting criminals because he's smart and because he's rich and because he's incorruptible. That's the entire basis of Batman. And they take all that and they flip it on its head because they don't like Batman. And this is why I have real problems with the movie. I kind of hate the movie. Like the more I think about it, the more I get angry at it because they take the fundamental idea of what Batman is supposed to be, the protector of the innocent who targets the criminal, and they say that if he targets the criminal, this makes him no different than criminals because Paul Dano, who's the Riddler, is also targeting criminals all the way up until the very end when they have to just sort of add on this attack on Madison Square Garden and New York Broad Writ for no reason. He has no motivation for blowing up a bunch of trucks and flooding downtown, like none. He doesn't explain why he does it. He doesn't explain what the purpose of it is. All the way along, he's been saying, I'm exposing the true face of Gotham. Okay, that's a rationale. But what does that have to do with blowing up the city? They add that on just so that they can create a false distinction between Batman and the Riddler so that Batman can change his mission. So now Batman's mission is not beating up bad guys and stopping bad guys. Now Batman's mission is to be a firefighter. He's no longer a detective or a police officer. He's a firefighter. That's a betrayal, and it's a real problem. And that's my biggest issue with the film.
There was a lot of stupid to unpack in that clip, so let's get to it. The movie presents a version of Batman that is unrefined. He's early on in his career and is only fighting crime as a way to punish the criminals and not protect the victims. The way Ben presents it as is if Bruce started out the movie as a fully formed version of Batman, and by the end of the film goes, "See what Batman was doing? Yeah, that is not okay. You should not be doing that." I feel like the problem here entirely boils down to Ben not understanding the distinction between fighting crime as a way to protect people and fighting crime as a way to punish the criminals. The theme isn't don't fight crime at all. It's learn to fight crime for the right reasons. This is perfectly exemplified by two scenes early on in the movie. The first one is when the street gang corners the guy in the train station, and Batman intervenes not to save and help the guy, but to punish the gang. This clearly shows when the guy says,
Please don't hurt me.
and Batman doesn't even react. The other scene is when Batman enters the Iceberg Lounge and starts fighting the Penguin's goons. There are no civilians present. He's helping no one by fighting these guys. The only thing these guys did wrong is working for a mob boss, which, yes, is not an okay thing to do, but Batman isn't here to fight said mob boss. He just wants information out of him. If you see this and think, yes, Batman is definitely trying to help people by doing this, then you need help. Psychological help. Fast. It's worth pointing out that Ben frequently compares this movie to the Dark Knight trilogy quite often. The thing is, in those movies, the criminals Batman fights are usually goons for supervillains actively trying to harm the city, and not just regular people in bad situations who turn to crime as a last resort. Fighting those people isn't going to help anything. Batman had been doing that for 2 years prior to the events of the movie, and the crime rate hadn't gone down at all. This is explicitly stated in the movie. So that was my main gripe with the video, but there are also just some minor problems or just things I thought were funny that I also wanted to just bring up or at least mention. So here are some of those.
The biggest problem with the film is not the wokeness. Yes, there's some woke touches. You have Catwoman, who is a woman of color, who is, of course, good, and you have the black female mayor, who is good, and you have the black Jim Gordon, who is good. Every white character is apparently bad, like all of them.
This is a very strange claim to make, considering that this is a movie where the protagonist and also the hero is white. I feel like the fact that all of the villains just happen to be white is more of an unfortunate coincidence rather than an intentional decision by the filmmakers.
So in the Nolan films, to take the contrast, the question as to why Batman does this is because if Batman does not actually intimidate the criminal underworld because the city is so corrupt, no one else will do it, and money isn't going to solve the problem. And so he needs to create a theatrical kind of fear in order to dissuade the criminal underworld from participating. And then, as it turns out, he also has to save the city itself and demonstrate his faith in the city by becoming a symbol. Here, you don't really know why Batman is doing what he's doing. It's never explained. He's very wealthy. He doesn't apparently do anything with his wealth. He doesn't try to give charity. He doesn't. This is actually made a plot point. He's a bad man because he's white. He's a bad white man who doesn't actually give charity. He's not involved, and he's not playing that as a role.
Yeah, that's the point. Bruce starts out the movie not giving charity or using his money to solve the crime, but he probably will by the end, after having learned the lesson about how, just fighting criminals isn't enough to save the city.
Again, this is part of the problem, is that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same character. So I keep using the Nolan comparison because it is the gold standard for all superhero movies, not just Batman movies. So when you look at Nolan's Batman, Bruce Wayne is the character that Batman is playing. Okay, Bruce Wayne is not real. Batman is real. Batman is who Bruce Wayne really is. And so he has to play a fop. In Batman Begins, he's squiring around ladies in his Lamborghini, and he's buying hotels, and he's doing all of this just to cover up for the fact that he is Batman. So you get very separate Batman and Bruce Wayne. You get the same thing actually with Michael Keaton. Batman and Bruce Wayne are two different characters. Here, Batman and Bruce Wayne are the exact same character. There are points where Bruce Wayne is walking around. He's got the same dour expression, same glazed look, same kind of emo thing going on as Batman does the entire movie. And so there's no dichotomy.
Again, that's the friggin' point. Bruce spends a lot of the movie so obsessed with being Batman that he's forgotten how to be Bruce Wayne. Like, again, this keeps happening so many times in the video where, like, he just, like, does stuff that was clearly, like, an intentional choice, like, by the movie to, like, help characterize Batman. But he plays it off as if it's some sort of, like, weird mistake that the writers did on accident, which, like, no, this was fully intentional, you dumbass.
And so Batman goes up there and he's beating people up. There comes a point where he's beating this guy and he's really, like, maybe beating him almost to death. And he stops and they take off that guy's mask and they say, "Who are you?" And the guy says, "I am vengeance." Okay, now this is the theme throughout the film. Ooh, the theme. Okay, so in order to explain why this is a problem, you have to now understand the character of the Riddler. So it says right at the beginning of the movie, "Who is Batman? I'm vengeance," right? He's just on the streets and he's beating people up.
I'm vengeance.
And then people keep calling him Mr. Vengeance for no apparent reason. Like, we don't know why they're calling him that because he never actually publicly says he's vengeance. It's in his creepy diary.
I mean, you literally just showed a clip of him saying, "I'm vengeance" publicly, and it's implied that it's become his catchphrase, but please carry on.
What makes Batman different from the Riddler and than any of these other criminals is these criminals target innocent people and Batman targets criminals.
Literally everyone the Riddler kills personally is a corrupt politician. You have a very interesting definition of innocent people. No, wait, that lines up with Ben's political stances. Never mind. So that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, then why not leave a like or subscribe? And if you didn't, then I don't know, they removed dislikes so you can't exactly do anything about it. Or maybe you could leave a comment about how wrong I am. I don't know. That'll probably be very fun for me to read. But whatever your opinion on this video is, I will see anyone who comes back in my next video. Goodbye.